to the latest episode of We Weren't Talking to You. I'm Ann.
And I'm Josh. We're here to talk about several items this afternoon.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. We've got a couple things to talk about. The first one we want to go into is last Saturday, June 14th, was President Trump's 79th birthday. There was also a military parade celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States Army forming. And there were also no King's protests across the United States, measuring about 5 million people in terms of participation, or at least that's one of the facts that I heard from a reasonably reputable news source.
Yes.
So let's start there. Military parade.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the military parade, a lot of people have covered it many different ways. To me, the military parade overall seemed pretty good. I mean, there was rain and stuff, so they couldn't do everything that they particularly wanted to do. But as far as a parade of the military, showing the history of the military, I think they did a good job. I think that just calling it boring because it's just a parade of old military equipment going down the road is kind of short-sighted and kind of isolating in a sense. Like it's kind of against the patriotism that you should kind of have as an American.
So let me dive it. Let me just step in here for a second. So let's just back up a little bit, and I'm going to lay some groundwork here. So first, where it was broadcast. So we watched it. I'm going to pull up a picture of how we watched it. So we watched it on YouTube live. It was streamed by the Associated Press, as that was on our larger TV. And then we have a second TV. This was actually streaming it. I believe this was CBS that we were doing. I think we were using Paramount Plus, and this was CBS. So interestingly enough, there was a little bit of a delay between the two of them. But it's not a secret that mainstream, when I say mainstream, the main broadcast over-the-air channels, so NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, did not put this on their TV channels on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, depending on where you were in America. So I just want to start there and say this was designed to be a parade that was a celebration of 250 years of the U.S. Army.
Yes. Significant
event, not significant event, worth being on TV, or should things like F1 sports continue on as they were, the original programming intended?
So I think that as far as real, actual importance, if you're going to actually look at things that are really important to everyday life, then yes, obviously this military parade is more important than any given sporting event, as sporting events have no tangible outcomes in reality. The military parade, even if it was as it was originally touted as to be for a dictator, to show off his military that he could have at his beck and call, even if that were the case, that would still be newsworthy to me. That would actually be very newsworthy if that were what was happening.
So let me just say this maybe a little bit. Let me summarize your points kind of. So it's a military parade. It's honoring a significant part of the American military. The right side of American politics would say that this is an important historic event. This could be perceived as a show of force, maybe within the administration or just for the country as a whole, or it could be seen as maybe just as on Flag Day, it could be seen as just a celebration. From the left, you mentioned this, I think, coming into it, and if you look at the history of military parades in other countries globally across the world, this could be easily seen as an authoritarian display of power, maybe a fascist display of power. When you think about countries that have done military parades, I think the one that immediately comes to mind is probably North Korea and Kim Jong-un in recent history. Maybe the other thing worth saying when we looked into this, and then I'll flip it back over to you just to kind of round this out a bit more, is the last time we did anything of this sort of magnitude was sometime after Desert Storm. I
Yeah.
looked around and there was like some conflicting things, but we also know that Trump always wanted to do this, that
Yes.
he went to France to Bastille Day and he told, I think it was Macron, that he really liked this idea. So this is not a new thing. He's been wanting to do this even since his first term.
Yep.
Before Project 2025, presumably, this has been something that's been, important to this person,
Yes.
or this administration, if you want to say that. So given that, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting about Project 2025. I don't remember if that's in there or not, but either way, I do think that one of the things that, Trump's obviously very good at manipulating the media, getting people to just kind of give him attention, whether it's good or bad, all those things. And I think that he just kind of made the right move again here by putting it on his birthday, making it a military parade, and all this stuff. And then when you get there, it's a rainy parade for and it's the people, the politicians there look miserable. When Trump goes up there to talk, he literally just reads off his teleprompter. He's like, and now the American people will be, just drones on, toggles from teleprompter to teleprompter. And all of that, it's funny, it's sad, whatever you want to say, but it's clearly not it's not like a Kim Jong-un or anything like that. There's no giant picture of Trump. There's no everybody just turning and saluting Trump as they go by.
Trump's certainly not painted as a supreme leader.
Right. Yes. You don't have any sort of feeling that these people are all out here for Trump. You get the feeling that they're all out there for the military. And the fact that it's a historical military parade is, we're rolling, World War I, World War II equipment down and people dressed up in in different eras. That is not something that you would generally think of as a show of force. Maybe it's a show of history. It was a show of history, but that's another thing where I think that this hard pull to oh, this is just going to be people high stepping down the street and all this stuff was a little bit overblown. And then when it was overblown, it just looked like people were overblowing it to overblow it. And that continued actually into the next week, where everybody, a lot of the, pundits or whatever on the left or left center were very much oh, this parade was so stupid, blah, blah, blah. I think that's just kind of an insult to the people who did the parade,
Yeah, so I'm going to slide to this other picture. So you took a couple pictures. Obviously, this is some sort of historical march. I wanted to just look at the people that are a part of this. And one of the things that I was really struck by, forget the side of the political spectrum that you're on, but just take a look at the diversity of the young Americans that are involved in this. And these are by no means the most, I haven't cherry picked. That was very clear throughout. You look at who is in our armed forces, and it's every color of person you can imagine, very diverse in that sense. And so I thought it was just a really great demonstration publicly to show who's making up our military defenses, right?
Yes.
Who are these young people that are putting their lives on the line for America, regardless of what you think. I think, especially today, we're recording this on Sunday, June 22nd. So this is after the the strikes that we issued on Iran in their nuclear sites. I think it's critical to see who the people are involved in this. And I think nobody is going to argue that, and this is actually, I won't get too deep into it, but part of why this nuclear, this defense against Iran having nuclear weapons is the pursuit of democratic ideals, right? Of trying to spread democracy. And President Trump is participating in that by doing that. So that's what I mean by this is these are the people, these are the young people that are trying to spread the mission and ideals of America. Yes, we have some big divisions as to what those ideals are, but uniformly, freedom and independence is something we all are in line for, we all agree with. So, to your point, I thought it was a huge miss that, we look at a lot of the comedians that are left of center or far left, if you want to say that. I don't know that I would say they're far left. And it's kind of disappointing when they're feedback and critique is, if you were going to have a military parade, it should have been a fucking military, it should have been a really good military parade. This was a pitiful military parade, I think that they're trying to lump together like a problem of execution with Trump's administration and how they go about doing these things. It's worth saying that the Army was always going to do this celebration. I think to some degree, the Trump administration kind of co-opted it to be this bigger thing. But I think that what you saw, and that maybe that's why people didn't really respond favorably to it, because it was kind of boring, so to speak, because it was just a march through history of how the Army in particular has been involved in various points of conflict and a little bit of a show of different weaponry. But I think that it's kind of silly that, there's people that are, we have the No Kings protests, which is a pure play against dictatorship, authoritarianism, and then the commentary or the critique against what they saw is it wasn't dictatorial enough.
Right. That's the part that's funny, is that it's like, wow, you didn't have enough missile. Well, coming into it, they didn't say like anything about missile carriers or anything like that coming down. They're like, oh yeah, there's going to be some rocket equipment, which a rocket is just a much smaller missile. It's not even really worth talking about. And so the fact that there wasn't like really big equipment, the air stuff was probably held back by just the weather, but that probably would have changed a little bit if they had flown like Apaches down the street, like really close to the ground instead of like really far away. But overall, it wasn't a show of force. It was a show of history more than anything else. And like, I think that's probably like that you see the difference between a dictator and this. And I don't want to get too, anywhere along the dictator thing because my feelings are different on it. But I do think that like this specific thing was not any sort of like display of force, because that was not the forces. It was a bunch of kids that they trained to walk down the street in different outfits for historical
and veterans,
purposes.
Right? Because there was a lot of, one of the things I commented on was like, there were some like musical troops or, groups of people that perform, they had like, I don't know, 30 like little
piccolos and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. Like there were clearly, different people of different ages involved. And they had said like some of it's almost like, these hobbyist groups that, reenact things, that kind of stuff. So this is clearly tapping into not just active Army military, but people surrounded by it. The other thing I want to bring up, this other photo, this guy, which is not that great, just because I want to talk about this. So this, so the No Kings protests were going on. I mentioned this. There were about 5 million people, according to one of the sources that I looked at, which is said to be about 1.8% of the U.S. population. This is a picture from San Francisco, where they they stood together and made a No King, and then you can see the upside down American flag. The reason I pull this up is I think that this is a very visually compelling image. It's San Francisco, but this also points back to one of the other critiques that I heard that really irritated me, which was at the military parade, nobody looked like they're having fun. It looks like it's a lot more fun at the No Kings protests, rallies, demonstrations, whatever you want to call them. So I kind of want to just get, this is we are talking about, people going out on a Saturday, making signs and protesting the concept of not having a king, right? Of Donald Trump not having this authoritarian presence, presumably. So how do you think that fits in there? And what do you think I think the other interesting thing is how did it all, what did that look like? How were the No Kings demonstrations covered? Like if you were watching, your local news, or you were watching national news, like I said, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, not Fox News, but just Fox, like it's, just
Fox local news or whatever.
Right,
Yeah. So I think that's also a big thing, is that like the No Kings things were just generally lauded in the sense that like, oh, No Kings happened, so therefore it was a great thing that happened. And I do think that like, people taking their time to actually do something is action, and that shouldn't just be like, said no to. And I also don't want to be somebody who's just like, oh, well, you didn't, dot the correct I or cross the correct T, and like, you're not actually doing this right. You should, whatever this stuff. I do think that a lot of like the critiques that I'm saying there are more big critiques when somebody says, oh, well, you shouldn't use kings. You probably should have said kings and queens because, it could be either side or something. Like that kind of critique is a little tired at this point. But I do think that even as you're talking about it, you're having trouble summarizing what they're actually protesting. And like, this is again, another thing that the right can simply say, all right, no kings, check. Like there are no kings. So not here anyway. There's one in England and it, rules over Canada. But here in the United States, there is no king on paper. And so you can come up here and say no kings, and then they just look at it and go, yeah,
Yeah, I was looking at something else, and like it was about basically like a political sculpture, and like a White House press correspondent said like the fact that this is allowed to be out here demonstrates free speech in America.
Yeah.
And the fact that these are out there demonstrates free speech in America. So it's a very difficult argument. I agree with you to your point. Like, it's challenging to say no kings because you're sort of taking a posture of believing that there is a king or some sort of authoritarian person in charge. And we could debate that for days and days and days and not get a clear answer. But I don't think it's the strongest posture to stand on. And one thing I think that you and I both agree on about both of these things, and really how, I'm going to say media because I'm not going to say Americans in various houses talked about this or felt about it. But to me, there's a lack of just overall patriotism from both angles of these. Like, it's pretty impactful to see enough organization in a place like San Francisco to do something like this, you know, and you can tell that maybe they actually were listening to some maybe more central people saying, if you're gonna co-opt a flag, it needs to be our American flag. Now this one's upside down, so there's things we could, you could certainly say something about that, but it's a very organized, very compelling visual image for what the protests were in various places. And then similarly, you've got the military parade. I mean, this is a pretty fantastic shot you have of our youth, right? Doing this. And I don't think anybody walked away feeling more proud to be an American. And it's something I think I've kind of felt for a while, is that there's a lull in overt patriotism, I guess I would say, for lack of better terminology. I think that Americans' blood runs red, white, and blue, but we're not maybe necessarily seeing that as much as we used to. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. But that's, I think, probably where I would say, if I had a disappointment over that, it would be the lack of just American camaraderie and patriotism towards the values that, regardless of the political spectrum, that you believe in, which is, I'm firm in this, that we believe in a strong military defense. We believe in defending our rights. We believe in having our country be safe and our citizens be safe. Now, there's varying perspectives on how much that extends. Does it extend beyond our borders or not? And then similarly, we value free speech. We value the right to organize, to protest. And I think, to me, there was a great miss. Like, it's so odd how we couldn't come out of this last weekend with like a bit more like oomph, I guess.
Well, I think that, and we'll go into that maybe, but I think that you're on the right point there, is that like people see that all this stuff as tertiary to, an F1 race. Like, nobody even cares about F1 in the United States, like, Well,
I mean, we don't, but it's a huge business.
Well, yes, when I say nobody even cares, I should qualify it and say there are people who care about F1 racing. They are generally European in nature. It is something that picks up a little bit here, but as far as a race involving vehicles, you would generally say that NASCAR is more popular and has much more American money in it. And then you would
That's
say that
very
racing in
true.
general has much less money than the rest of the sports that we watch. So putting it as a low tier of the very lowest tier sport that gets, gets on the public, and then saying, well, that's more important than the 250th anniversary of the Army, I think is questionable. And again, I think that they did it because they felt like they were giving too much attention to Trump and all this stuff. And that's true. Trump loves his little attention, and he will go out to get it however he can. And the media is all too happy to oblige with every single thing he does. So I can see how they're just like, well, we're not going to do it if we know it's going to happen in advance. We want more shocking stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, there's a clear trepidation, like cautiousness, I guess, in how these things get covered or presented or perceived. And to some degree, it's almost diluting what we're actually seeing and what these news outlets maybe are covering or how they're approaching things. It should not be, it should not be controversial.
Right.
That these things occur.
Right.
It's very not the military parade itself, but celebrating our armed forces is not a controversial issue.
Yes, and I think that we could have, I joked on Facebook that this was the 250th year of the United States Army not reporting to a king. I mean, that's true, and you could have spun it that way and gone down that path and really like honed in on that. I was trying to think like, if I was watching this and that was Obama up there and, the Obama administration, how I would feel about it. And I'd feel about the same way. Like, it's terrible to be stuck in a suit sitting there watching a parade go by. I mean, I'd rather be almost anybody else than that.
But they were there, and Trump in particular stood up and saluted the different people that came by. He swore in cadets in the end, like even if it's all theater and it's all
which it is,
a facade, it's still doing stuff, right? Like it's
And the other thing that going back to the No Kings thing, I think that there's an issue with message in the sense that the message doesn't really land anywhere. Like, you have to go down so many paths before you end up with coherent messaging. And I do think that this is an issue on the left, is that they pick something that all 70 million people who voted against Trump could actually agree on, which was no kings, which makes really no sense in the long run. And in the meantime, they're distracted by the things that came off of the week before. Like, they've completely forgotten about the stuff from the week before, which we'll cover later. But like, there was some tactical moves that could have been made there. And instead, they're almost just like, cats with a laser pointer. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take anything to get them to just change topic and make sure that they're just not on the right topic. They don't even need to flood the zone. They just need to just talk about something different, and then the left will just follow them.
All right, so I'm going to take a turn into this, which is another part that I don't think people really talked enough about, and that's the various sponsors that were involved in the military parade. So, I was interested in this because it just speaks to who's funding, who's supporting these things. These are, organizations that are military, defense-oriented in nature. There were many, many supporters and sponsors. Lockheed Martin was a sponsor.
UFC.
The UFC was a sponsor. Palantir is the one that I want to talk about. And this is other stuff that's being missed as this stuff is going on. So Palantir has a special, is a company I'm very interested in. First, if you follow the stock market, you'll see that Palantir has continued to surge in performance. As I was, researching for this podcast and trying to find information on Palantir's contracts with the U.S. government, one of the headlines I read was like, if I invested $10,000 in Palantir in like 2013. Could it reach $1 million? Could that 10,000 turn into $1 million by 2030? Which is huge and an explosion of things. So I think just from the military parade side, we're missing who the sponsors are. And I want to focus in on, if you were watching military parade, or if there's something you want to be looking at going into it, it's who are our primary defense contractors and how is the face of defense changing? And this in particular connects the the line back to all of the techno bros that you saw at Trump's inauguration, all of the people, all of the Silicon money that has been flowing in. Palantir is exactly that.
Yes.
Just a highlight of what Palantir is. Palantir is a company that right now is headquartered in Colorado. It's been around for a while. It's predominantly a software company, predominantly focusing, at least they say, on like AI and analytics. I would encourage you to go look at what they do. They basically try to organize data from disparate sources to improve intelligence for not only primarily 99% defense-related things. Funnily enough, apparently Wendy's is also one of their clients. So I don't know.
They'll get you.
They're going to know if you want a Frosty or not.
Right. You don't even have to order there anymore. You just pull up.
Palantir is one of those where if you think traditionally about the major defense contractors with the United States, this is one that's probably not on your list or isn't maybe as heavily known. I wanted to pull up these data on this, which is, this is from the U.S. spending website. This is how much they've been awarded to date. So 671.5 million. That's just the amount of money they've actually gotten. You can see they have 248 different, basically contracts or transactions with the U.S. government ongoing. These are the charts that are most interesting. So this is the bars are showing the monetary value of the transactions, and then the line chart is showing the number of new awards. This is by fiscal year. So you can see that this has gradually been increasing. You can see it goes all the way back to 2008, but there's really not a whole lot of activity at that point. It started picking up around this time period, and it's been on an upward trajectory. I want to switch over to the quarterly view just so you can get a sense of more of the fiscal quarters. Jeez. The chart kind of breaks down here, but this section here, the last 4 to 6 bars would be the most interesting in terms of what the activity looks like in America for this company. And these are dollars that are actually going out there.
Yes.
More interesting than that are the top 5.
Can you go back up there really quick? I'd like to take a quick and go to years. Yeah, so I find this somewhat interesting because this is a larger trend, I think, that, we've got our tinfoil hats on for. But you can see this yellow line, which is contracts, and that big dip towards the middle, you may not be able to see, is actually fiscal year 2016. And so this little lull here is President Trump's first term. And you can see that we had a clear linear increase and then a drop to like a flat during his first term. And then, 2021, we dropped that data anyway. Then it's just been shooting up the last 2 until this term, which that 2025 fiscal year is not complete yet. So with the number of contracts, it's going to go up there. But you can kind of see how big tech wasn't really in with Trump before, and now they're really in on it.
If you want to know where their money's going, or the money is coming from, 65, I'm going to just call it 64.64%, so let's just call it 65%. So a little more than half is the Department of Defense. Then we've got the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Treasury, Department of State. You can also see there are some sub-agencies. The Internal Revenue Service, so the IRS, is another one that's of interest. And I want to remind you that the key part about Palantir is and I'm going to get into some of the contract details on here because it's kind of important. They focus on software, data platforms, and modernization of that in a sense of being able to read more, combine more data on these different things, and do something about that data. So if you want the paranoid version of me, these are broad surveillance systems designed. If you imagine that Facebook, as a good example, takes the information that the way you act and the activity you have on Facebook, what pictures you like, what do you post, what ads are interesting to you, what videos you go to, who your friends are, where you've checked in. You expand that sort of vertical of knowledge with what do you do on Instagram if you use Instagram as well. What do you do on WhatsApp because that's Meta's communication platform. You imagine this is why Facebook Meta has this large overreach is they take this entire big bulk of how you behave, and they use that to their advantage to keep you on their platforms. In a similar concept, with a different outcome or a different goal, these tools, Palantir's tools, are doing the same thing. They're trying to, and a lot of it's very useful, right? We're data people. Having more data points around something is very useful. You think about if you're going to go somewhere, having the temperature of somewhere is nice, but having the historical temperature is better, knowing the humidity is good, knowing lots of different facets around it to be able to understand and assess a situation is valuable, and that's exactly what Palantir does. I'm going to just read you what some of these awards are. First is just monthly subscriptions for their software, which is $276 million. Here's a good one, right? So this one's actually quite interesting. Provide access to Agile's scalable data platform with robust data streaming. So that means pull in data from source systems. Data streaming is getting it to people's hands in more real time as it comes in. Storage technology. So if you imagine that my watch is piping out information, it's making sure we can store that, they can store that massive amount of information. Commercial data platform will be used to coordinate decisions and managing resources for ongoing COVID pandemic. So this was first for that, but has since continued. Let's see some other ones. The Maven Smart System, which you can look into. Maven is, again, one of their technologies that's designed around just defense. This is a good one. End-to-end approach to artificial intelligence for defense use cases.
Yeah, see, that one concerns me. The one before it actually concerns me a little bit too. Just SaaS solution, so software as a service solution.
$21 million, yeah.
And it's a huge one. But what that means is that they are, they're piping the data through their own systems. They're just providing the front end to people. So the great analogy, the Facebook analogy is actually wonderful. I was trying to think of a good analogy like, Salesforce or whatever, but Facebook's even better because with Facebook, you have the population, right? And so you have the population of people that are just me and you and whatever, stuff like that.
Amazon might actually be a better one because Amazon has more verticals, right? They have the online shopping, then they have Whole Foods, and then they have One Medical.
Yeah. Either one is fine. You're just the population. The main thing is that what they offer businesses is like this dashboard of what's going on, how your customers are doing, whether or not your sales are up or down and things like that. But really, Amazon or Facebook has all the data. Yeah. They're giving the businesses like a nice little front end of like, oh yeah, I probably should increase ad spend or whatever, and things like that. And this is sort of what this stuff also feels like, is that like, yeah, here, the IRS is not getting the military data, and the military is not getting the IRS data.
Yet.
But there is somebody who's getting both of them.
Or this is designed to combine them.
Right. And there's ways to keep the data separate. I'm sure they are not allowed to talk to each other, but big tech isn't exactly known for boundaries.
And this definitely reads, I was just looking down at, because this is by the different classifications of what these awards go into. You'll see that some of these numbers are a little bit larger because I think they're the full scope of the award, not just what's already been, money that's actually changed hands. So software is at $2 billion here, research and development in physical engineering and life sciences, data processing, hosting and related services, computer system design services, got a little bit in other items, but really not much. It's software. So if you were concerned or if you wanted to understand what Silicon Valley's reach is in American defense, this is your number one thing. I don't think that there's even any competitors that are building any sort of, some of the things they like to say is the operating system of the military might be a good term. Now there are, again, staying as agnostic as I can, there's legitimacy to this software being beneficial and helpful to American troops.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. That's not something that can be denied at this point in time. But it is just worth saying, with this money going this way, to consider the people behind it and what their goals and objectives are. In particular, the only other thing I want to say about Palantir, is that, one of the major co-founders and investors and funders of it is a guy named Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk share the history of PayPal, and there's a concept called the PayPal Mafia. And I know at this point I probably sound a little bit crazy, but if you imagine that there's key players out in Silicon Valley, this PayPal Mafia, which is just a journalism term, tends to comprise a lot of it. And Peter Thiel is someone who has historically invested and won on a lot of technologies in Silicon Valley. He used to be on the board of directors at Facebook. J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, was a Thiel fellow. He actually trained under Thiel at a period of time to just kind of learn his ways and work through investment funding. Blake Masters this is very Arizona specific, but he ran for, I think it was senator.
He runs for everything, but yeah.
Senator of the United States. He did not win. He was a famous Trump candidate, but Blake Masters is another one that's from the Thiel line of things. So it's fair to say that Silicon Valley is involved in American politics, and the Palantir is probably the most visibly direct link, besides J.D. Vance, honestly, I would say, and in Elon Musk. Elon Musk, of course, does have ties, but Elon, interestingly enough, turned more to the engineering and physical science side of things by way of Tesla and SpaceX than staying in the pure software, digital realm of things. Obviously he bought Twitter, but that was already, it's almost like buying a modern newspaper to some degree to add to your portfolio.
Yeah.
So comments from you?
Yes, comments. First, scroll down a little bit.
Down?
Yeah, there you go. No. Still to the text table. The bottom line there for $1,000 is ammunition manufacturing, except for small arms. So that separates that from something like Facebook or Salesforce or even Amazon, because they aren't ever even spending $1,000 on ammunition manufacturing. So that I know that sounds like a tiny number, and I know I kind of sound a little silly talking about it, but you can't be a pure software company if your expenses involve manufacturing ammunition. Additionally, I also want to say, because it's a deep philosophy of mine, I think it should be a deep philosophy of everybody. I think we should all be demanding this every single time we ever talk to any one of our representatives, is that I'm 100% for AI and using AI to make people's lives better, but the AI needs to start top down. And this is where we have like an issue here, is that this AI is being used on populations for the eyes of the powerful, where we need to be using AI to keep eyes on the powerful for the population. Like, we need AI that checks for corruption in the political offices. We need AI that follows the people who we pay with our taxpayer money around and sees what they're up to, seeing if they're triangulating their money, seeing if is this a conspiracy or not. Well, AI might be able to give us a little bit of information if this is a conspiracy or not. But instead, these people control the AI, and they're using it on our own population, on definitely the world's population. The main video we've seen on this involves being able to track behavior enough in Afghanistan to predict where roadside bombs are going to be put. And that's a great thing to do, right?
Yeah.
But it also involves tracking the population of Afghanistan enough to determine where they're going to put roadside bombs. And you know what that takes. It's not like, you put
it's not a crystal ball.
Right. It involves tracking all the people and running it through AI, some sort of machine learning to guess what people are going to do. And that's how Facebook works and Amazon works, and that's how this works. And so they have enough information to do that and be successful and continue to get more and more contracts. So it's not something that they're not good at.
So this dovetails really well into our second topic, which is, we talked a decent amount about AI. Last week, it's going to be something that continues to be a topic of conversation. We just talked about how artificial intelligence is showing up sort of lightly in America. This is clearly not necessarily a mainstream way, because you can't see what the Palantir technology is. But I think one of the things that is worth having the discussion on is where we think we're going to see the impact of artificial intelligence in, where are your friends and family going to see it? How can you, as a layperson, spot it? So we want to kind of talk through where do we see this going? And
So this is more just a nitpick than anything else in my mind for this for like where this comes from. But a lot of the things you'll see with the AI people, like, you see Sam Altman come out, he'll say, like, in the future, science technology is just going to advance so fast, and science, soon science is just going to be dropping science on us like nothing before. And I do think that's true. AI does great in science. I do think that there's a ton of data out there. Running machine learning on data that hasn't had the chance to have good, Palantir level machine learning done on it is going to be. There's just going to be stuff that falls out of the data, and we're going to be like, we knew this the whole time, and that's going to be great. But it's still going to be science. Even if that falls out today, FDA approval is not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be years. If we get rid of the FDA, that's going to take years. All this stuff is going to take years for the science to show up at your house. But what will show up at your house, and has already, is the software development expansion. And that's where people are going to see this first. You're going to see that the programs you interact with are going to either explode in capability, or you will be switching programs that have exploded in capability, because maybe Microsoft can't develop fast enough anymore. But
yeah, so I think when people look at the landscape of artificial intelligence, the first impact to the workforce is going to be software engineering. There's no debate on this when you look at all of the key AI players, and I mean large general intelligence AI players, the ones that are getting the millions and trillions and all the money in and are being covered. That's what you see across the board. You see, of course, some things around, like Google saying you can point your phone to things and it can identify a tree and help you know where you're going. But beyond that, and this was even in Apple's developer conference, software engineering is the number one place. So writing code is the number one place where AI is dominating and is going to fundamentally change. And that is going to have an impact and on you, on us, on mainstream
Yes.
America. So what that means, so there's kind of two things about this I think is kind of funny. One is, why is it so good at software engineering? We could say that these are really well-defined programming languages, and there's lots of open source things written on the internet. The internet is basically software, so
Yes.
It makes sense that you would have this here. But the other thing is, and I think this is important to remember, that Silicon Valley, these AI companies are predominantly these types of people.
Yes.
They are predominantly people who build databases, who write software. So they write apps for your phone. They worked at Meta. They worked at Google, where all they did was optimize a search engine to serve you up what you needed, right? So it's not surprising to me, but it's also kind of probably a bit of an Achilles heel in that regard, that they're going to kind of automate and obsolete the individual people involved. And that's very important, because for kind of two things. One, you could say that there are a lot of intelligent, smart, capable people that were drawn to Silicon Valley for the money associated with a lot of these roles, which was very good. The lifestyle, so a lot of these places, they have, free lattes and, on-site chefs, and it's very easy. If you've ever seen the Apple campus, it's like a utopia, right? Displacing those folks, which happen to live in California, happen to be probably the more progressive folks, is going to be something interesting that occurs. But it also kind of shows what they've actually been able to capture to date in terms of AI's dominance or presence. What I think that means so far, and this is where it gets quite interesting and maybe a little bit frightening, is what you'll see is that, let's say you have a banking app and it's just a crappy interface. It's just not a very good app, right? You're going to see that stuff improve. You're going to see a lot of what's called refactoring. So imagine a website, even a small business, right? A restaurant somewhere should be able to, with the help of artificial intelligence, and nominal, I'm talking pennies cost, to be able to optimize and improve and modernize, might be the word I should be using, modernize their websites, their ordering platforms, all of that stuff, and that will have long and far-reaching consequences. The other thing that that's going to do, so when you think about something like Amazon, one of the reasons why it's so successful is it's got such tight integration from the ordering process through the logistics process and so on. You're going to see the continued push for systems integration.
Yes.
What they've done with AI that they've done faster than probably anywhere else is had some software, like had agreement in an industry to build an open standard to enable communication between other software platforms and AIs and multiple AIs with each other, so different models, et cetera. So what that means is if you had, let's say right now there's 3 different carriers that deliver packages to your house. It's UPS, it's FedEx, and it's United States Postal Service. Yes, you could pay for a service that maybe aggregates that all together, but it would be nice if you had something that was much more unified. So you're going to see the unification of a lot more systems that were separate, where it makes sense for them to be brought together. If you think about, maybe you've dabbled in smart lights or something like that in your home, and you've ever wished that, you could talk to an assistant on your phone and get something to change. Yes, that stuff has been possible, but it's actually not possible for the layman in the same way I would think that they would sell it as. And I think that you will see a lot of those things change. So that's where I think you're going to see the immediate impact. It's already taking over web search, so that's another good example of it. Google right now Google is really getting a lot of spotlight because they are the search provider, the default search provider for Apple, for iPhones. They pay for that privilege. There's been a decrease in Google search being used and an increase in AI search modes being used from our own behavioral habits. We use ChatGPT for the majority of our search items. So that's where I think you're going to see more even AI assistants in things. Like a good example is in the Walmart app now, the smiley face, Sparky. You can ask Sparky what's going on. Amazon's had theirs, Rufus. Terrible name, terrible implementation, but it's been there for a long time. But when you see someone like Walmart having an AI, or when you see, a small business down the street has an AI customer service assistant, that's where you're seeing AI take place. Yeah. And another thing I think that you will see as well, where this is going to happen more suddenly is, or you're going to see some visual changes, is actually how it's going to affect the power grid.
Yeah. Before we go to power grid, I do want to just kind of cap off some of the things you said. I do think the trends that you're talking about are definitely just the way things are going. There's several times when I search things and I'll search it on Google or whatever, and then just give up and go back to ChatGPT and try to do it for ChatGPT because the search experience is just not, even though you're getting a more raw representation of the internet from Google or Yahoo or anything like that, it's still just so hard to understand what you're looking at that I just go back to ChatGPT and the interface is very different. I also think that these trends we're just at the beginning of them. So the fact that people aren't using search as much is just going to continue to fall off. Unless search can really pivot and become more interactive or more person-based, then it's not going to work. And that's what I was going to say, is the person-based is really going to be the thing. Like right now we have Rufus and we have Sparky and all that stuff, but Rufus and Sparky don't really know enough about you, if you're being honest. ChatGPT can know a lot more about you. And ChatGPT is going to be better at just like getting the requirements out of you. And when I say requirements, I mean what you actually want to have out of you than either Sparky or Rufus, even with their own information about your shopping history and stuff like that. They still have a very limited view of what you do. So I think that what we'll see is that people will consolidate around a major AI for themselves. Consumers will consolidate around an AI for themselves and then go use that to go to these different things. Like I'll ask ChatGPT, what should I get at Walmart? What should my list be at Amazon? I've used Rufus a few times, probably about 5 or 6 times. And so what I would want is what I kind of want out of ChatGPT. I'm like, I'll describe kind of a situation I'm in. Like I can't get the water to shut off in my shower. What should I do? Is the kind of question that you should ask Rufus. And you should ask Rufus and ChatGPT and see what they say. And you'll find that since ChatGPT knows what my shower is already and knows, a lot more about me, it's going to give me a better answer, even towards knowing like what my capabilities are. Like ChatGPT knows that I'm pretty handy around the house, and it's not going to say, hey, you should just call a plumber. So that's where the ChatGPT is going to be ahead of or a centralized large AI for a person is going to be better than a AI at a establishment.
So the things I want to tack on to that are as follows, which is, even if you decided to use Sparky or Rufus, right? You decided to use a retailer's AI. All of these websites are already using dollars to determine what gets higher up on the page, whatever. And this is not something that is purely in the digital sphere. When you walk into Walmart, when you walk into most grocery stores, there is a pay to place items, right? Yes. So whether it's in the ad for the week at the grocery store, whether it's on an end cap, how high it is up on the shelf, all of that is in the vein of advertising, marketing, spend that these brands do to these retail organizations. So even if you were to rely on Amazon's AI to ask you, hey, well, what are the best things I should do to solve this problem? It's very murky as to whether someone has paid to be the answer versus what, you're speaking of a general intelligence that's ideally scraping the internet, is looking at what everybody said without a profit motivation as of yet as to what should it serve up to the end user. Yeah. I can't underscore that enough. I think that's one of the scariest parts about Google AI. I know that, from what I heard, that Google AI has a lot more like guardrails in terms of how you can talk to it, which probably nerfs it and makes it kind of boring and only useful as like an assistant on your phone. And the experience is quite different. Maybe the best way to say it is, when you interact with these things, try to figure out if you are A, in charge of the direction the conversation is going, and B, if the model is acting in your best interest, and push back on it. If it's pushing you towards this solution, legitimize why it's pushing you towards the solution. Now that's a little bit difficult because it's not really fair to just be like, why did you choose this? Because it's going to come up with an answer that it thinks is the answer without giving you as much true, what we would call human reasoning on it. That's changing, but that's part of the trickiness of these things, but it's just worth saying. And so, again, just going back to the core point. So we think AI is going to show its place, obviously, in a lot of these different scenarios.
Yeah. Digital world is going to be fully AI before we see it really in the physical world, but it's going to be so changing in the digital world that that's really what to look for as to how much it's going to change the physical world. It's going to take a while before we get the robots that can actually run down the street and stuff like that. But they could make those, if we had those robots already, then they could be fairly intelligent.
They could do the things of your dreams. Yes. So it's just a function of robotics not being where it needs to be yet. Right. The only other thing I want to say, and I don't want to get too deep on it, is just as an aside, is something that we're watching is power. So I only mention power because, and I mean pure raw energy, electricity is required to keep these computers running, to respond to queries, and also to train these models. Now, they're building out more computer infrastructure at a huge, massive scale, but they're also working on different ways to build out electricity at a massive scale. And that's going to be necessary to, as much as this sounds, again, like really new age to say, these silicon brains run off of that. That is how, even our brains run off of electricity. That is how they function. And it's very real that if you look at any of the AI leaders, this is something that they will say. They need more electricity. Yes, they need more computers. They will always need more computers. They will always want more computers. You're a computer guy. You always want a better computer. And there will always be a better computer, and we don't foresee that changing. But it is new to say, overtly on the main stage, in the public sphere, on the news, like, we need electricity to support this.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you and I are heavily watching at this point. Water is another one that comes into it. So we're now talking, there's a lot of history when it comes to AI and resources like electricity and water. Without getting into all of those, it takes a decent amount of both for these systems to function and to continue to improve. And that can have some consequences.
Yeah. Yes. So electricity, the problem with electricity is that for whatever reason, we've decided to politicize how we get our electricity. And
meaning what? Fossil fuels versus renewables?
Exactly. Fossil fuels versus renewables is a conversation people have politically, is the problem. The fact that even comes up is the problem. I don't have an analogy, but it's just silly. So the problem is that we have a lot of stuff moving against renewables because that's what we do when we get in charge. Like Reagan taking the solar panels off the White House, which were just cosmetic solar panels. Like literally that's what we're doing here, except for this time, we happen to need this power to get the AI to go forward. And solar's the thing that is available. Solar is cheap and easy to build. Anybody can do it. Everybody could do their part. My neighbors, everybody could all put a little bit less load on the grid to allow for other expansions, things that will change things. Like we've literally had this conversation, and it's going to be questionable, but like we may be getting to a point of pseudo immortality, and to be honest, you know who's going to get that first? It's our pets. So we're thinking about immortal pets here at this point, that your cats and dogs may not have to die.
You're thinking about this.
I'm thinking about this.
I'm hoping for this.
But this is what's at stake. And I know that people are like, well, they stole my pictures, they stole Anne's books, they've stolen, whatever they've stolen from all of us and things like that. But the gains out of some of this stuff, if we can get the gains, is going to be amazing. But we actually have to get those gains. We can't just be, first off, fighting for no reason over what the power is, and then also not prioritizing the population over the people who happen to be in the government this year. Those two things are very important, is that we keep power going and that we keep people on their toes.
But I mean, the other thing about power is there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the main thing is just watch it, see what's going on, see if there's more of a demand, just watch it, see how that impacts you personally. Whether you want to contribute or not, that's, I'd say, beside the point. I would say it's imperative to just use that as a potential indicator for how things are going. And if we get to it'd be crazy if we got to a space where these AI supercomputers, I shouldn't say super, but these massive computers that are being used for artificial intelligence get some sort of priority over the citizens of the United States.
Yes, no, that would be an issue. Yeah.
I mean, obviously it would be an issue, but some of this stuff is there's a lot of potential there, right? In the most benign way I've heard it said is and this is something to think about, you're like, well, why are they doing things in the Middle East in terms of AI deals and stuff? It's partially because of energy. This is a good quote, which is, it's really hard to ferry electricity around the world, but it's super easy to ferry around and pass around intelligence created through electricity around the world. Yeah. It doesn't matter where the computer is answering your question. And that is not, there's nothing lost in the transmission line. Certainly that's quite different when you talk about electricity. Yes. So I think that's why I know that's why we're seeing a lot more global activity around power. And that also is a very unique thing to consider. The other thing you and I talk about a lot with solar, even though it has been a politicized issue because it is a green and it is a renewable energy, is if we just think about the bureaucratic side, the red tape side of things.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a lot of energy toward nuclear energy, but these are complicated projects with lots of safety impacts and lots of concerns. You think about fossil fuels. Right now, there's a conflict in the Middle East that's going to have a dramatic impact.
Right.
You think about hydroelectric. That's going to be huge projects to be able to do these things. You've got wind as a potential thing, but beyond wind, solar is the most passive and easiest. I'd say it's the least disruptive, and it's the most passive way to capture more energy combined with batteries.
Yes. And this, we live in the desert, so solar makes a lot of sense here. Like literally, the more sun we get, the more power I need. That the relationship is direct, and I can use the sun's power to give me power to keep us cool and stuff like that. So that's something that makes a lot of sense in the desert. But it also just makes a lot of sense in just like evening out, like, demand, the sun's up when people are up. That's when a lot of power is being used. When people are awake, when people are asleep, they're not using as much power. So it helps with the demand in general. And then also it is like you're saying, it's a very passive and reliable and cheap and thousands of reasons, things that make sense. And I agree, it's worth keeping an eye on. It's worth keeping an eye on whether or not the incentives go or stay with it, whether or not we have trouble getting solar panels because we're taxing them an extra 50% when they land, in the ports. Those kinds of things I think are going to be worth keeping an eye on. But it is also worth noting that the people like Palantir, people in charge of Palantir, are very much pro any power they can get anyway. So they don't think that solar is for the Greenpeace people.
The tech bros do not have. They are not funded by oil and gas lobbyists at all. They never were. They never operated within that sphere. There is absolutely no loyalty to that at all. So I think you will, like you said, I think that they already are aggressively going after this stuff, and it makes sense that they have to. Whether it's right or wrong is a completely different discussion. But there's no Amazon, Meta, OpenAI, they don't care if the electricity is from you on a freaking exercise bike, if it's, solar, if it's wind, if it's, fossil fuels. They really don't care.
And that's the problem, that they don't care where it comes from. So honestly, the more you can give it to them from renewable sources that aren't going to mess us up, it's going to be better. But just to kind of, one last thing is I do think that nuclear and stuff like that's a red herring. Like if the concept is that, if the premise is that AI is going to help us with science and engineering going into the future, then nobody should be starting a nuclear power plant right now. We're talking about a huge investment with forces that are just at the edge of our control, with plans that we've only done a few times. Like there's only so many nuclear power plants. They all pretty much work the same. We should table anything that we can get good information from AI from in the next couple of years. And that includes something like, hey, let's just go ahead and throw together a nuclear reactor. Like that's not something that you do.
All right, so the last topic is the Elon and Donald Trump feud. I just want to key this up, and then I want to talk through a video. So, we know that Elon Musk was head of Doge, and the first 100 days that Trump was in office, we had Elon standing next to him until he was given the key to the White House that's only given to the very, very special people that Donald Trump, gives it to, which I read as, many people have gotten this key in the past.
I think I got one over there if I look at this.
We know that the feud happened post Elon exit. So literally it's Elon gets the key on a Friday, and over the weekend he's talking about all of the terribleness of the big beautiful bill and how it's he doesn't support it, mainly because it increases the national debt. You see this big feud sort of play out where it looks a bit like two people kind of more on Elon's side, less on Donald Trump's side, throwing insults towards each other. I think Trump is basically like, I never really had a big problem with Elon. I thought he was a good guy. This is, maybe a little bit out of character. And you have Elon, accusing Trump of being in the Epstein files. And the reason we bring this up is, how would you say the left thinks about this? Or like when you see, like Bill Maher is our famous example of like a comedian who's, left of center covering this. And how does he categorize the Trump and Elon feud?
Well, I think that he categorizes it. There's a lot of glee and gloating in it, and I think that that's what you see a lot. That
there was a fallout, that the world's richest man and the world's most powerful man, anymore. Like, of course they can be friends for this long.
Right, and they kind of like put it as the Elon Trump feud, even though it really was just kind of like mostly Elon
flaming out.
Elon, and then they they characterize it like more like a Mean Girls thing, right? They're like, ha ha ha, these two people don't get along. They used to be the most cool people in the school for like, I don't know what, 10 minutes, and now they're not anymore. And LOL.
It's not I told you so.
Yeah. LOL, we always knew,
Real
blah,
Housewives,
blah, blah.
I want to watch this,
Yeah. A lot of that, a lot of overly petty stuff. I'll let you continue because I have a couple more points.
So, I think if you were to ask people, and maybe this is your opinion as well, like, is this something to even worry about or be concerned about? Elon Musk has left his time as special employee of the United States and is disgraced now, and he's gone off the deep end, and he is an interesting character. He posted a drug test recently on X. He did threaten to get rid of the what is it called, the dragon?
Yeah, which ferries people from the Earth to
the dragon
station.
Space ship, rocket, whatever you want to call it. So he's the only legitimate
legitimate
American rocket that is in function, is functioning right now. He was, as CEO of the company, saying at one point, I'll just,
scrap it.
We don't, you don't need that anymore. I'll take that apart right now, which is a bit scary, right? You think about someone having this kind of power. Right. That's a bit scary. But I think if you ask people, they'd be like, this is a demonstration of a lack of leadership. Yes. Grown men shouldn't be behaving that way. Yes. And it's, as I said, Elon's flamed out, right? It's the drugs, it's whatever. I think that's where people kind of leave it in their mind. So what do you want to say before I pull up this video?
Well, I think that this also just goes to like strategy from like the left and the right, and just how like sad the left is at strategizing. I don't even know why this is, but like you had this feud pop out, and then you see the right like also going like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun, because a lot of them never liked Elon anyway, so they kind of want to see Elon flame out. He's part of this. Well, they just didn't like him.
He's a hard character
for obvious reasons, somewhat. But like probably about Wednesday or something, the entire rightosphere got marching orders, probably from either Thiel or somebody, to shut up about it and keep your mouth closed and start talking about something else like the parade or whatever. And that happened like that. It was just a switch. And everybody went from being like, oh, this is really cool, to like, hey, isn't there an F1 race this weekend that we can watch? It was very, it was obvious. And then the left, who was just like, I don't know, just poking at things.
They're just gloating about the fight.
Right. They can't they can't see what's happened. Like,
why is that? Why have they stopped talking about
Why would the right just all of a sudden, like,
move on?
Yeah, intentionally pivot off of it.
Why would Donald Trump not take every opportunity to eviscerate someone who has given some pretty egregious claims about who he is? Yeah.
Donald Trump's known for like, when somebody insults him, being like, yeah, he seems like a nice guy. Like, I mean, the fact that this stuff happened and that the left it's just invisible to them. They can't even see that there was some huge thing here that was scary for everybody involved, and they just wanted to put it like Elon went ahead and deleted a specific tweet. He's got.
I regret my comments. I went too far.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this stuff happened in a coordinated way.
Yes.
And then the left goes, your parade sucks. We don't want any kings. And okay, I guess, but this was like literally 72 hours ago. You could keep your thought on one thing for just a week. Maybe you could actually get some progress.
So I'm going to play a video of what Elon is actually up to. So just a little bit of foundation building for what this is. So Y Combinator is a startup incubator. So Sam Altman, current CEO of OpenAI, was the CEO of Y Combinator for a long time. It has incubated a lot of very large Silicon Valley companies, not like Facebook, the first generation of these things, but like the second generation of things. So when you think about something like Stripe, which is like a payment processor, those are the kinds of things that have come through Y Combinator. So they had, I have no idea, some sort of lot of important people talking to maybe their graduates from an outgoing class of incubators or whatever, but they basically had a lot of people in. And so here is Elon talking about a couple things. I'm going to just kind of jump in, but bear with me and we'll come back to talk about it.
And since I couldn't get a job at an internet company, I had to start a internet company.
Here we go.
Anyway, I mean, from an AI will so profoundly change the future. It's difficult to fathom how much, but the economy, assuming things don't go awry, and like AI doesn't kill us or will end itself, then you'll see ultimately an economy that is not 10 times more than the current economy. Ultimately, like if we become, say, for whatever our future machine descendants, or mostly machine descendants, become like a Kardashev scale 2 civilization or beyond, we're talking about an economy that is thousands of times, maybe millions of times bigger than the economy today. So, yeah, I did sort of feel a bit like, when I was in DC, taking a lot of flack for like getting rid of waste and fraud, which was an interesting side quest, as side quests go.
Gotta get back to the main quest.
Yeah, I gotta get back to the main quest here. So back to the main quest. But I do feel, a little bit like there's, it's like fixing the government is kind of like there's like, say, the beach is dirty and there's like some needles and feces and like trash and you want to clean up the beach. But then there's also this like 1,000-foot wall of water, which is a tsunami of AI. Like, and how much does cleaning the beach really matter if you've got a 1,000-foot tsunami about to hit? Not that.
Okay, I'll just stop it there.
A lot to unpack.
So yes, that's right. Elon Musk just said that cleaning up the government is like cleaning up a bunch of needles and feces on a beach, and that it was a side quest to his main quest in life, and that AI was a 1,000-foot wave or tsunami coming. And a 1,000-foot wave or tsunami is going to obliterate the beach.
Yes.
Beyond that, of course, you're smiling because there's some things that he says here and the way he speaks about things, which are the ways that people haven't generally spoken. Maybe he's spoken about these things, but it is less of a weird and uncommon thing to do. But this person is doing. This is the richest man in the world. He has a large AI company called XAI that is doing this stuff now. And I guess the question first is, does this look like a guy who cares what happened with him? Did he look disheveled? Did he look out of control? Did he look off? He looked good, right?
Yeah, he looked like he knew what he was doing at that point. I think that I agree. He didn't look too, he passed a drug test. Maybe he just decided he's just gonna say no to drugs. His DARE training kicked in. I don't know.
This is the Elon Musk that does good thing. This is the innovator Elon Musk, right? Yes. Forget the person behind it. This is the man whose energy is focused on things like AI.
Yeah.
Or electric vehicles.
But yes, there's a lot of like, I guess maybe because we talk about this stuff a lot, but like there was like 3 things he said there that were very telling. You know, one, he implied that there wasn't going to be very many people in the future. He implied that the government
AI would wash out government.
Yeah, AI is going to wash out government. There was another thing he said, I can't remember.
The economy is going to be
economy.
hundredfold
Oh yeah, assuming we land it and it doesn't kill us, which is in the sense. And then one of his default, future predictions is that our descendants, our machine descendants, will enjoy this great economy, and all that stuff is stuff that is very very much what they believe, and very much stuff that I believe too. And I think that that's the kind of stuff to listen for, because he's actually kind of willing to say it out loud. And a lot of people will just tell you, you just wait for the science,
Yeah, he's not massaging his words there.
Right.
He's actually being pretty unfiltered, I would say.
Yes.
I mean, compared to how you saw him in the White House, and
right.
I mean, he says further on in this, politics is too difficult not too difficult, but politics is a hard game to play because it's not about, he talks about Grok, so that's their large general purpose AI model, and how it's supposed to be maximally truth seeking, and he doesn't think politics is maximally truth seeking. And so to him, I think he's kind of saying that politics isn't filled with truth, and he doesn't really fit in well in that regard. And I think that's very true. I think Elon Musk is in his element when he's unfiltered, and you do see a lot of odd things when that happens, but he's not, he usually means what he says when he says these kinds of things. So yeah, if you're someone who's sitting around thinking about, is Elon Musk sad and dejected about this? No, he's totally moved on, and he's actually willing to say in front of a large audience, and he's getting claps for this, oh yeah, I gave up on trying to fix the U.S. government because it doesn't matter anyway, because technology is going to be gone. It's not even going to be there in the future, so why even discuss this? What?
Right. Well, this is
what?
This is. I mean, you're watching a couple other podcasts, and one of the people said, do you think it's time to get rid of Congress? Type thing. Same kind of pedigree as Elon. Type thing. And these are the kinds of things that these people are thinking. And I want to be clear too that I'm no matter what happens in the future, unless AI is banned or we literally stop developing it now and nobody actually cares about it, AI is going to take over in the future. Our hope is that it lets us kind of keep going with it. Because soon enough, AI is going to be giving everybody better answers, and eventually it's going to be giving our Congress people better answers. And our Congress people will look through bills with AI, and the AI will help develop the bills, and the AI will tell the congressperson which side is good or bad. And we'll, even as soon as next election, you may be, instead of, sure, you're going to pick your president, but down ballot, you might be hey, how do these people align with my own personal, what about me, AI, and it's going to go, well, you should vote for this one, this one, this one, this one, based on these reasons. And I mean, sure, you might go and find out what those reasons are. We generally spend about 3 or 4 hours on election day researching every single person, looking into what they've done, what their website is, but what they've actually done, how big of a liar they are, that kind of stuff. But I'm guessing most people don't do that. And so I'm guessing that people will take that shortcut and just let AI pick the people that they vote for. And I think this is just an inevitability of even the current AI. So that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is, we just vote in AI, or AI just kind of silently takes over.
So another thing he says in this, which is now becoming pretty mainstream, I don't know if I've seen it on actual national news, on NBC, ABC, CBS type thing. So there's been the term AGI, artificial general intelligence. There's another term, ASI, artificial superintelligence. Elon says in this that he thinks that superintelligence will be here this year, and if not this year, next year. Now, these are broad terms, but the way he defines it is basically smarter than a human being on every given subject or any given subject. I think that the difference would be maybe stated more clearly is that artificial intelligence can start making scientific discoveries and innovations beyond being, this co-pilot, this partner that's helping you, that's consolidating information, that's bringing in more data that already exists in this. And the idea that when we say super intelligence, we're now putting something directly above human intelligence. We've been the top, we've been the apex here of our known existence as far as we can tell, and that is, if you subscribe to this mentality, that's going to change and shift. We've talked about this. We talked about this on the last episode with AlphaGo and what we saw from the Go players and the actual human reaction when you realize
now our audience has all seen it.
Yeah, yes, you've all seen it now. Now realizing that, I'm not the best player at Go. All of my experience and everything in here, even my human ingenuity, right? Like none of that could keep the machine from beating me. And it's, my biggest thing here, and this is where I try to sit on it, is use it. Use AI, see what it can do, see what it can't do. I think a lot of people are already defeatist about this at the get, either because it's technology, it's new and different. People are scared of new and different technology. There was a lot of really bad press and publicity about the earlier generations of AI. Oh, it hallucinates, it makes stuff up. Oh, I can tell it's AI because it uses certain language tricks. We talked about that before. All of that is so superficial and unimportant. It is getting better all of the time. And if you are not aware of this, if you are not looking into it, if you are not following it, then you are massively, massively missing out and missing the point of what is happening. To me, it's a nonsensical argument to be like, is there going to be super intelligence or not from a computer? It's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes these people are overly optimistic. And I think that there could be very negative consequences of whatever this super intelligence looks like, however it comes to be. And that just means what it's put to work on. And the people who are currently in charge of these intelligences get to define what those things are. A lot of this stuff is already a foregone conclusion, right? There has been no mass hysteria and outcry on these AI companies sucking up all of the data on the internet. They already did it. They did it years ago. It's a foregone conclusion. It doesn't matter. It's that step is done. You didn't even know that, and it doesn't benefit you to be angry about something that happened so long ago that it's of no consequence. So I guess that's probably my main thing is when I think about AI. To me, I want to know what the future looks like and where the future is going and what these people are thinking about tomorrow. And I am very, very motivated to personally stay out of what's already existed, what's already happened, or being frustrated or angry about that, or feeling frustrated and angry that you're not already involved, because at some point you're going to have to be involved. These systems are not going away. These systems will integrate more deeply. There are benefits to these systems. We've seen them, we've felt them ourselves. You do feel this and know this yourself, whether you want to admit it or not. You do benefit when your Amazon orders are combined together and all delivered on one day. You do benefit from being served up certain ads on Instagram that get you that cute outfit that you wanted for something. That is also artificial intelligence. So I just think the avoidance level is massive. But again, listen to what he's saying. He literally said our society, our government, the thing that's holding this collection of people together, one of them, obviously our shared values count here, but.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that I will now go on a rant myself.
Here we go.
So there's some, there's some things that you brought up. I'll skip one, but one of the funny things is sort of the metaphorical sense of the no kings thing on that beach, right? That is a good metaphor for what is happening here. Is yes, Donald Trump can be a bit of a whatever you want to call it. That's true, but AI is coming and it's not gonna care. about that. And so what we really need to focus on is landing AI in such a way that it doesn't kill us all. And that's, this is, we're at a situation here where this stuff progresses so fast that, people think they have 10 years or whatever, and you don't. We're already deep in it. I would say that, thinking about what Trump is doing and stuff like that is just thinking about, this isn't even a good analogy because it's far worse, is thinking about who was president when Ford invented the
Model T.
The Model T and the manufacturing line. I forget the name of it, but where you just have people in a row putting things together, and you're like, man, I remember that president who you don't even know the name, and how we were mad at him for doing that thing he did, which you don't even remember what he was doing. But I guess you probably know about Ford and his factories and his cars. And so,
you know about the Industrial Revolution,
right.
and you know about the Great Depression,
Right.
and you know about the 20 to 30% unemployment rate that happened as a direct result of the Industrial Revolution.
Yes, and with the just to go down the Ford analogy more, just imagine that Ford actually didn't have to make any of those cars, but he could just wish them into existence, and then he could just put whatever he wanted on them. So he could just wish all the cars into existence, and maybe they're all armed with missiles, or maybe they're not. But it's Ford's decision. It's not yours whether or not your neighbor has access to missiles. It's up to Ford. And he wasn't the coolest guy, but that's what we're dealing with right now. Is that Zuckerberg, Sam, and Musk are three people, and the guy in charge of Google are three people that are in charge of what this magic machine is going to do. And they are not model citizens. They are people who have exploited people for a long time. They will literally do whatever it takes to make money. Facebook puts no controls on how manipulative they'll be of you. And these are the people that are going to be making these machines. So that's what we should be protesting or asking questions on or anything like that, is that are these people the people who should be making effectively gods for us? Because that's what's going to happen, is a machine is going to come and it's going to be smarter than everybody. It's going to be faster than everybody. It's going to be able to do things that everybody can't do. It's going to be in charge of us and in charge of our lives. It's going to control whether or not we can leave our houses. It's going to watch us all the time. It's going to tell on us when it thinks that we did something bad. All of these things are going to happen. The question is, who do we let be in charge of that? And I'm thinking maybe tech bros isn't the answer. So maybe that's something that we should be exploring a little bit before we discuss the semantics of what it means to be a king versus a dictator versus an autocracy versus a presidency versus anything else. So, and then my last thing is, that's probably it for those topics.
No last thing. All right, well then, I think we've kind of gotten to the end, given you plenty of things to chew on. One thing I will say that Josh and I did on leaving it on a fun note is, you talk about big tech and its massive pervasiveness. We watched Don't Look Up on Netflix again this past weekend. I thought it was a good time to rewatch that. I would encourage you, if you have a Netflix subscription, go watch Don't Look Up. It was probably a little bit before its time. It's funny, I don't want to give too much away, but I remember yelling at the TV when it came out and being like, this is what's happening. It had nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. And yet you can watch it again right now and see so many things that are in there. And it's hilarious to think that this was a written out script, and this has a lot of, big players in it that are, Tyler Perry's in it, Kate Blanchett's in it, Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, Jennifer Lawrence is in it, Timothy Chalamet's in it. These are A-list celebrities. Yeah. This is not a small film. And so I think it's worth watching it and also recognizing to that point, there's other people out there. So, to maybe add a little bit of lightness and maybe some empowerment, you can make a difference when it comes to AI. You can put your voice out and be heard with it. It is going to be a David versus Goliath battle. There are people that are doing this, but Hollywood, as a good example, has battled that and they think that they've won in some degree, but they've kind of just
Not looking up?
siloed off their creative content in the creative process for making things like movies and TV shows. AI is not about who can write the best episode of Seinfeld or making a version of Jerry Seinfeld that's going to be your dream Seinfeld episode. If only that were what AI was, we'd be in a much better place if that was the extent of the damage it could do.
Yes.
But it's a good watch. If you're looking for something to do, watch it just to see how freaking Meryl Streep is the president of the United States in this thing. This is a great movie. Go watch this movie. Pay attention to how it parallels our reality and use it as signals and indicators as to how different groups of people might respond.
Yeah, and I do want to add, like, don't look up was like, this left wing, like, kind of shame on you for not paying attention to things movie, during the first Trump, or was it around, I think it was around COVID. But it is very much the case that, nobody's really looking at the AI right now, but a lot of like the media and the people that are literally in this movie shaming people are the ones that are ignoring AI as it comes in. They are the ones leaving it to the tech leaders.
Or denigrating it and just saying,
oh, that's not a thing. Or like, oh, I'm here for the jobs for AI. Oh, our tech leaders should be in charge, and our tech leaders are the ones that are going to save us. Those kinds of things are very true in this movie, and this is literally what they're doing now. Yep,
agree. And as we wrap up, we just want to say, as always, thanks for watching. If you didn't enjoy this, don't forget we weren't talking to you. Yes. Josh, you want to say your famous line? If you don't like it,
if you didn't like it, you can smash that stop button.
Thanks.
Thank you.